I remember years ago when we started noticing the propaganda to divide and conquer and separate men and women from one another. And then a little bit later, the term femcells and incels came up. But one of the earliest things was women just saying that they didn't want to have children. And I made a video, and I think I used Chelsea Handler and Sarah Silverman as the thumbnail because they were famous comedians at the time, and they had told the world that they never planned on having kids. They didn't want to. So I said, well, that's just two women. What were your chances with Chelsea Handler or Sarah Silverman? Anyway, don't be offended. Because people were like, look at this, they don't want to have kids. Well, most people do all over the world. And, if you're dating somebody, whether it's a man or a woman, and you find out they don't want to have kids, then it's probably not going to work out. Date somebody else. Isn't it great that they've been so forthright and being honest with you and transparent and saying, I don't want to have kids? But then terms like the wall and baby fever came into the internet pop culture vernacular, and we found out that once some women, as they got older and they hit 35 and they're like, wow, I'm on a clock here, I'm running out of time. If I want to have a child, it has to be now. I've dated baby fever. I know what it's like to date a woman who's really horny, and sex can be a lot of fun. It's fornicating, it's wrong, you're not supposed to do it. I feel like I have to say that. Because she wants to get pregnant, and she's just really agreeable because she's on a clock and she's had her fun, and now she's ready to settle down, even if it means settling. And we agreed not to talk about numbers because I've had enough experience to say, let's not talk about numbers. And so had she. But the more the relationship went on, there was these little, I guess I might as well just call them red flags, where I was like, I don't know if I want her anymore. And I suspect she had similar red flags about me, and it was just a bad match. And you know why? It's because of numbers of sexual partners and the desensitization that comes along with it. And then I was looking at her like, she's settling, and she was looking at me like, is he settling? And the answer is yes, for both of us. Even though I really liked her and we really got along, like, it was somebody that I just kind of liked hanging out with. And it was also the worst sex I'd ever had in my life. And we did some pretty dirty stuff. But it wasn't special because, when you're with somebody, it's like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Adam was there first, so he kind of wants to show Eve everything. And that's why God, I think, wants people to be married before they have sex. That's why it was like, it's in the Bible, you're not supposed to have sex before marriage. Well, why? Because it's a bonding thing to have sex, and it's supposed to be special. And once you're married, you've made commitments to one another in sickness and in health, and richness and poorness and all that stuff. People can make those commitments without marriage. It's been proven. Sometimes people shack, I'd say commonly in the West, people shack up and then they get married. You can look at statistics for how the divorce rates, which is like 75%, if not mistaken. Maybe it's less than that. But also, keep in mind that probably less people are getting married. And without knowing numbers or any of that stuff, because it doesn't matter. It's the most basic thing in the world for people to want to pair up. But also, let's be direct about it. Men and women can live alone, but it's being made harder for people to live alone. And if you want to live alone, you have to be willing to put up with less. So people who are, let's just call it sour grapes or bitterness, who've had their hearts broken, want to blame the opposite sex and say, well, you can't trust men, you can't trust women, and everybody's alone and it's hard. And but that's not the, we make bad choices, but they're changing the world on us. BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard. If you want to blame somebody, we should be blaming them. For buying up all the real estate. We should be blaming, you can blame the president. This whole, if anything's going to destroy the ability to buy a home worse than it's already been, it's the 50-year mortgage. if you do the math on a 50-year mortgage, right about when you're going to die, you own your house. And if you don't have kids, who's going to inherit it? One of the things that people are doing now are figuring out how they can go together and buy a house, and then everyone will have a place to live, but you have to share it. I don't know, how that affects, if you get married and you and your buddies go and buy a house or something together, and you work really hard to do that. Who owns it, all the paperwork? Who cares? But, when I think about the people that I know, and I'm old, I'll just start with my parents. My parents started out poor teenagers that hadn't even graduated high school. It was easier and way cheaper cost of living buying a house because it was a long time ago. They started out in a trailer. They both worked. They saved their money. And then when I was 7 or something, they had enough money to buy a house, which they wouldn't have been able to afford if they didn't get a deal on the house because of who they knew. And they were poor teenagers, but so there are some that would say that this country was, in a lot of ways built on, married teenagers who were married to each other, and trying to make a go of it. If you look back in time. But now, if you want to buy a house, you kind of have to be a couple. And you both have to work. But that's been my whole life. My whole life growing up, and again, I'm old. Can I just say I'm Gen X? So both parents worked. In anybody I know, both parents worked. And when I grew up, any of my friends or anybody that I knew that bought houses, both the man and the woman worked. They saved their money. They bought a house, and the cost of living continues to increase where people can't support themselves anymore. And it's horrible, and homelessness rates go up and stuff. And a lot of, if you look into homelessness, a lot of that has to do with mental illness. So if you're going to look at the homelessness rate going up, that also means that people's mental illness has gone up. Mental illness and homeless being connected isn't a new thing. I remember when Ronald Reagan became president, and the first act he did was to take the solar panels off the White House because he was an oil man. I think it was Jimmy Carter put him on, and then Reagan, it was his first official act. People made a joke about it. First thing he did was take the solar panels off the White House because he had his money invested in oil. So then when Reagan, there was a thing in the 80s called comedy relief, because one of the things to cut spending that Reagan did was he closed down mental institutions for people that needed to be kept, because there was a segment of the population that had mental illness and these people needed to be kept. And he closed up all those places and cut down the government funding for that. So all these people now became homeless. So now America has a homelessness problem because all the loony bins have been shut down for people that needed that. So the answer to Reaganomics and the series of recessions, that was part of Reaganomics, was to always have recessions and the trickle down of economics. All this bullshit and bad, So they made comic relief, which I don't think they do anymore, but all the comedians would get together to raise money for people who were homeless, who also predominantly were mentally ill. So that people are mentally ill now, and if they're not, they're telling us that we're mentally ill. So we kind of live in a world where the internet encourages mental illness, and that maybe you're defective, maybe you should think about that you are, and then they try and program people to feel like you're not good enough. That's divide and conquer strategy. I said that when I opened this video. That's what we're talking about, is divide and conquer. So men and women quite literally were made for each other. Women are nuts and men are bolts, and they fit together, and they're supposed to stay together. We need an example of who to be and who to find for peace on earth for all mankind. So our role models are going to be the people in our life, And then there's the popular culture that says, here's your role model, bozos really, sports star athletes, celebrities. Now it's influencers online. And none of them are good. We need an example of who to be and who to find. Like as we're developing. If you're a little boy, you need a good example of a man and a woman, who to be and who to find. If you're a little girl, you need an example of who to be. Good example, men and women. Whoever that is that raises you, your caretakers. It used to be a saying like, I want to find a girl like dear old mom, or I need to find a man like dear old dad, or whatever. And that's done anymore. People complain about the welfare system now and the SNAP benefits and all that stuff with the shutdowns. And part of the problem of the breakdown of the family was the welfare system saying, no, those children can be warded the state. Get rid of the father and we'll set up benefits for single mothers. But I've known people on welfare, and this thing that I've heard these arguments where the guy who wasn't the original father, there's a man and a woman living together, don't have any kids. He gets like an elevation in his job, a promotion, I'm sorry. So he got a promotion at work, and they were fighting about it because it was going to mess up the benefits they get that they needed to survive. It was going to cut into their insurance. So he got a little more money, but it drastically cut the benefits that she was getting by being shacked up with him, and the welfare that she had that they all got something out of. And so it was like the welfare. So what I'm saying is that the welfare system seems to be set up to keep you on it, because if you try to get out of it, then they take the benefits away and you can't get anywhere. It's to keep like a stasis. So a lot of women on welfare with kids get into that, what they call it the welfare mindset, or whatever Urban Dictionary colloquialisms there are for like welfare moms. It's a mindset, and it's insidious, and it's evil because people are trying to survive. And I know that there's people on welfare that get those benefits and they're abusing those things, but what it used to be was, oh, you're a little bit down, this will help you get back up. Now it's become what it was, I do believe, what it eventually became intended to be by design, is just to set up this communism, Marxism, socialism, living stipend, what they now call universal basic income, where everybody gets something, but it's just enough to keep you where you're at, so everybody stays in the same place. It's here's everybody at the top, which is a small percentage, and everybody else is poor, which again is part of that divide and conquer strategy. If you have a country that's full of families, then they'll be willing to do anything to protect their way of life and the people they care about. But if you have a bunch of people that are lonely and isolated and selfish, they're focused on caring about themselves, and then you can get them into the mindset that a lot of people are in now, which is, I forget about falling in love with somebody, I can't afford that, and if we're ever going to have kids, so you just kind of like put those things behind you. And that being said, also, it can be okay for people to be living alone, men and women. It's just that they're making it harder. So it's almost like with this divide and conquer strategy of isolating everyone and telling men and women not to be together, it's exactly what needs to happen. So I kind of hope that the evil plans for globalization fail, because making it harder for people to live may have the unexpected effect of pushing people back to each other. The Lord works in mysterious ways. He gets through to us however we can. And God is working in our lives, even if we don't believe in Him, trying to help us. God's love permeates all things. You can lean into it or turn away from it. It's a free will choice. But God also knows a lot of people have no idea what's going on. And He still has an influence in our lives because God is good. Even if we don't believe in Him, He's still trying to help us, which is pretty amazing. I said God is love. If you want to think about how to define love, it would be that unconditional love. And yet, there are rules and there are commandments to live by. And there's some people who may not know the 10 Commandments, yet they're living them, because by design we have those things within us, built in. by God, and some people function on that and they use those things. So there may be somebody that never went to church or said Jesus' name, and he's just way better at being a Christian, and he isn't one. So anyway, to put away the God loves us thing, because I know some people don't go for that. I'm just saying that doesn't matter, because people by design are made to pair up, because that's how we get here. There's been a lot of work and efforts and developments of technology to try and make it so that people could have kids. Like the idea of creating artificial wombs, the idea that they want to grow people in plastic bags, and they experimented on animals. Do you ever see the videos where they have the goat in a plastic bag, and they're like, look, we have this goat fetus developing inside a plastic bag, and here's the goat that was grown in a plastic bag without a mom. And they do all these experiments with eggs, where they're growing a chicken in a petri dish, and they've done these things. And all the stuff that they're probably doing that they don't tell us about, that's horrible. I remember one of the things that the Russians were trying to do in World War II was they said that they were successfully growing a human baby inside the womb of an orangutan. But the war destroyed that research, or just that ruined that work. But they never stopped doing those things. So is it possible probably to grow a human in the womb of an animal? They've probably done it already. Why? Why not just let people have families? Well, look at what's happening. What did BlackRock tell us, and all the other evil people? They said, you'll live in a pod, you'll eat the bugs, and all the rest. And then BlackRock, Larry Fink, famously, who was, if he still is, the CEO of BlackRock, which is BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, which is the umbrella corporation from Resident Evil, but it's real. He said, at BlackRock we believe in forcing behaviors, so we're just going to keep forcing behaviors. And what are the behaviors they're forcing? It's a divide and conquer strategy, and whatever it is that you want, it doesn't matter. They're going to give you what they think you should have, and they're evil. And I could do, I'd be doing a whole other video, which maybe I should do, where I just talk about BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard. Moon has a pretty good video on BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard. Maybe you want to watch it. Moon has got a BlackRock video. He probably has several. That's just one easy, hey, want to see how they've invaded our lives at all as many ways as possible, and they continue to try and do so. They're part of the divide and conquer strategy, and they're also buying up all the real estate in America. They're buying up all the houses in America, and they are a monopoly, and they should be dismantled and destroyed by every means necessary that doesn't get people sent to hell. And be relentless. You should be praying for the destruction of BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard. Really, honestly, pray for it. Pray for it to be taken apart and dismantled. You can do the same thing for Disney. But anyway, I'm going to keep it focused on the divide and conquer strategy to keep men and women apart. If somebody's going to be honest and tell you what they don't want and post it on social media, then everybody who doesn't want that doesn't have to date them. But the problem comes in where people get offended by that, because it's being enculturated that we should stay alone, and it's not healthy. Is it possible for a woman to be healthy with her wine and her cats? Well, it sounds like a bad combination. Alcoholism and toxoplasmosis. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's probably not good for you. Is it okay for beer and sports? Well, probably sports aren't good for you. And beer, we now know, is feminizing because of the way it's made. It's full of estrogenic compounds, and it's turning you into, a crybaby, I guess. Men and women alone, it's nothing new. And yet, I think of I'll go back to the Bible again in St. Paul, and he said, look, It's better for the young widows to marry than to stay single, because they'll just become gossips and all the troubles of the day back in St. Paul's time. Which I don't think people are fundamentally different than they ever were. I mean, we have the same complex of human emotions. The world changes around us in terms of technology and technocracy and all that stuff, but people are still made of the same stuffs. When you talk about things like transhumanism, that's an efforts of science to take mankind and turn us into something else. Trans means crossing over, and humanism means crossing over from being human into what? More easily manipulable and malleable. By what? Greedy, evil corporations and the wealthy elite whose fortunes shape the fates of nations. You can say it's because they want the perfectly managed system, a system that they can have AI run, which is not even going to happen. But, really, I'll bring Bible stuff back into it because that's what's true. The devil and his minions just want as many people sent to hell with them as possible. The easiest way to sum it up is to say a thing you've heard before: misery loves company. They have it translated into every language in the world. People are unhappy, they want to bring everybody else down. And that brings me back to the original, where I started in this video, people announcing that you can't trust the opposite sex because sour grapes, because they're bitter and disappointed that love didn't work out for them, and then they've just decided to be weak and give up on it. And yet I've known people who never gave up on love. Nobody ever loved them, and then they died. One of my best friends, he had a heart attack and died. He had money, he was always happy-go-lucky, always optimistic. Well, he wasn't always optimistic, he was kind of neurotic. But he never gave up on love, that he would find a mate. And he never found a mate. He had a heart attack and he died. And he knew about women because he had been preyed upon multiple times because he had money. So he would meet somebody and then, he was sharp enough to say, nah, she doesn't really care about me, she's about money. And he was right. He was being manipulated because women just they thought they could take advantage of him because he was such a nice guy. And then that's the type of woman he kept meeting, and he never really knew the love of a good woman. But I think it's in Proverbs. It's definitely attributed to Solomon, I think, in the Old Testament, where he says, what a blessing it is to have a good wife, because it's a rare thing. Does that mean that women are no good? No, I just think it's difficult to make marriages work. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is attributed to Solomon, so maybe there's something to it, but I'm willing to let that go to move on, and say it's not fair to attack women and just say that women don't measure up and that they were rotten from the first all the way back to Eve, because Adam was in the garden by himself and everything was fine, and Eve shows up and we got kicked out of the garden, and everything that was supposed to be our inheritance was changed because of the deception of Eve. But it's called Adam's sin, what Eve did, because she tasted the forbidden knowledge of good and evil, and then she goes, here, Adam, and instead of saying, God, Eve did the one thing you told us not to do, what did he do? He joined her. So they're both guilty. So they say biblically that the husband is supposed to be the head of his wife. That's from the top. That's from God. So that's the order of things. It's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We have a divine patriarchy. So when we got to the point with the internet where, celebrities are saying, destroy the patriarchy, and you're like, they don't really know what that means. Actors will do whatever you tell them to do because they pretend to be people. They're liars, professional liars, and witches and magicians, unwittingly, unknowingly, some of them. Because, when the movie credits roll, it says cast, and everyone in those credits are casting a spell on you. They're all participants in the casting of a spell that millions of dollars are paid for to propagandize to you, because all movies are programming. And Hollywood's evil. Why is it named Hollywood? Hollywood is the wood that a magic wand is made out of. What's a magic wand? It's a phallus. A wand is a willy. And that wand is made out of holly wood. It was the traditional wood that was used to make a magic wand to do witchcraft. And what does it say in the Bible? No witchcraft, no sorcery, no necromancy, no conjuring, no whatever. Necromancy is talking to the dead, right? So it's all this list of things you're not supposed to do. So it's all the Harry Potter stuff. It's all the Gandalf, Lord of the Rings stuff. You're not allowed to do that stuff. God said so because it's setting you up to be hurt. He said, look, it's really simple. If you want help, just ask me. But instead, we try to do it our way. And that would be magic, witchcraft, sorcery, going against God. I know witch talk's a very popular thing now. So, wanting equal, like why isn't it considered really important that someone would be a mom? Women are like, we want rights, we want the same things as men. And it's like you had like a really important job to society, and you need an example of who to be and who to find. But moms putting aside women putting aside families. Why is there no value in being a mom anymore? I mean, of course there is. It's not going to go away so long as there's people on the earth. But it is being propagandized too. And like a lot of things that we get from the internet, there's a come down from it. I would dare say everything. There's a come down from all this where people have it's like God is so forgiving, so gracious and merciful, I guess I might as well just say. Where he's like, go ahead, have your fill. That's why repentance is huge with God. Go ahead. I want you to really get this. So go out and do as what does Aleister Crowley say? Do as thou will. All right. Jay-Z says that too, right? Do whatever you want. Nike, do it your way. Or Burger King, we do it your way. What do you want? Except, where am I going with this? Have your fill. And then when you realize it's not going to work out, tell me you're sorry. I mean, it'd be better that you just wise up and not do the things that feels wrong to do. Like there's something within us where like we do a thing like it's probably wrong, so I shouldn't do it, and you do it anyway, and then you desensitize yourself. I think sex, a lot of people do this with sex. They desensitize themselves to sex so it's not special. It's supposed to be a special secret world between you and your spouse. But, like that pornography is free on your phone and anyone can find it, even with safe search filters on, or you block stuff for your children. They can still find dirty stuff anyway. The whole point is to corrupt you, and sex is a thing that's used to corrupt people because it's the most basic part of any divide and conquer strategy. If you want to divide people, keep them apart, and men and women are drawn to each other, and it's natural. And it can be distorted and perverted all kinds of ways. Like, that there's a flip that can be switched to sexualize things that shouldn't be sexualized, and it's all over the place. I mean, one of the things that people used to complain about for years was DeviantArt, because it was a place where kids went to look at pictures and post their own drawings, and it was full of perversions, and it helped enculturate perversions globally to sexualize things that shouldn't be sexualized. Because sex is a powerful drive. It's the most powerful drive. It's the act of creation. It's how we get here. A man and a woman join together, and you're brought into the world. That's how we get here. So if you want to control people, take the most important things and make them unimportant. And then you have a bunch of bitter, angry, resentful, isolated, divided, and conquered, and lonely people. And look at what's happening today. Young people are complaining that they can't, that they can't trust the opposite sex, and it's being like enculturated. Like the complaining about it is kind of, like making it so. It's like probably some kind of form of witchcraft or magic in itself, just saying the same things over and over again and hearing the same things over and over again make you believe it. It's a thing that kids used to do in school that I don't know that they do anymore, but it's like an old schoolyard trick where a bunch of kids would get together at class and say, let's psych out Jenny and tell her she's sick. So, one kid goes up to Jenny and says, "Hey, Jenny, are you okay? You don't look so good." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then another kid goes up to Jenny and says, "Jenny, are you okay? You look like you're not feeling good. You look kind of pale. Are you okay? Your eyes don't look right." And then, 5 or 6 kids in the class do that. And then next thing you know, Jenny's in the nurse's office and she goes home for the day because they psyched her out into thinking that she was sick. That's old. Now it's more sophisticated, telling everyone they're not good enough, they don't measure up. The idea that the average height worldwide is to be like 5'6" or 5'7", that's the average height of most men globally. So tell most men in the world that they don't measure up by putting inside, through social media, that if the guy's not 6'5", he's not a man, which is dumb. Because most men globally are not even 6 feet tall. They're like 5'7" or 5'8". Is it 5'8"? Whatever. I can't remember anymore. So it's telling men and women both, if you're not 6'5", you don't measure up. That's just part of divide and conquer. Who came up with that number that the guy has to be 6'5"? I want to see that video. I want to see the video. The origins of why it's said that the guy has to be 6'5", or he's not a high. That's like, if he's not that, then he can never be a high value man because you're not tall enough. If you want to get on this ride, and the ride's a woman, you have to be this tall. Whatever. And the stuff, like, my whole life growing up, there was people together, and some of them are ugly couples, but they loved each other. That still exists all over the world, but we're being enculturated, at least in the West, and I'm sure it's going out to the rest of the world, these impossible standards. And men and women both have them, and they're being told that, they're both being told that the opposite sex doesn't measure up. And then there's all the confusion that comes with sexual confusion and all the gender afflictions that people have. You can be whatever you want, just don't be what you are. And I remember seeing the one video, I just clipped it in one of my other videos, where this woman was making confession through a VR avatar, VTuber. She's a VTuber, and through her avatar, which was an anthropomorphized animal, and she was saying, she was like coming out of the closet, that her affinity was not towards men or women, but German Shepherds. That's not good. That's not healthy. There's too much of an increasing thing where women love animals too much. And that there's guys that do this too, and they put on the fursuit and all this shit. And that's part of a divide and conquer strategy too. So in the earlier days of the internet, you could point at things that you knew were wrong, that were against your soul or whatever, if you want to get metaphysical about it or godly about it. And you could say, that's not right and that's wrong. So you're pointing a finger and hating and shaming. And yet, the second commandment, one of the most important 2 commandments, is love your neighbor as yourself. And the most important commandment, love God above all else, because He makes it possible that you would learn how to love your neighbor as yourself. And there is an epidemic. They say there's not a loneliness epidemic, but there kind of is, because we've kind of been psyched out into it. The younger generation has. I mean, I'm old, so I know that it's possible for men and women to grow old and to be alone. Spouses died and you're alone. Even if you had one and you built everything with your spouse, but they're making it more difficult so that the only way that you could have things in your life that you want, if you don't want to live in the pod and eat the bugs, is that you have to pair up with somebody, and it has to be somebody you can trust. And people don't trust each other. But I should hope that it's that, like all the divide and conquer stuff they did, I hope it just pushes us back together. Men and women, I should say, like pushes men and women back together, because we're not going to make it without each other. without somebody. And then, like if you got nothing to lose, maybe you'll take a chance. I mean, people who are hurt and shamed and humiliated and all this stuff, it's hard for them to trust. The wounded narcissist wants to lash out against the thing that it believes hurt it. And loneliness epidemic, whether it's male or female, and also the narcissism. I mean, it's all because of the internet. It's a programming tool. It used to be you get programmed through movies and TV shows and songs on the radio and stuff you read in a magazine. Now you can doom scroll. That's a good name for it. Scrolling and releasing chemicals in our brain. Movies, TVs, and music did that before. Now it's just more it's more everywhere. It's just a pale imitation of God, who is omnipotent and omnipresent. You can shut your phone off, but it is trying to, hold you there with who needs to take drugs? Sure, they help break down a person, whether it's booze or, weed or prescription drugs or whatever. We have drugs that are released chemically inside of our brains. There's the whole flux back and forth between dopamine and cortisol. You get a dopamine hit, then you see a shocking video and it releases cortisol and you're alarmed. You're like, I just want to see something to make me forget about that and make me feel good again. So you're back and forth between dopamine and cortisol, dopamine, cortisol, dopamine and cortisol. That's why people say it so much. They know that that's what's being done to us. And if you look at the brain scans from people being online and what they're online with or what drugs they're taking, they're shutting down our brains. Who's they? The wealthy elite whose fortunes shape the fates of nations. They'll say that they just want a perfectly managed society and try and make globalization look like a good thing. But these people are influenced by demons underneath it all. And the whole plan is just to grieve God and get as many people sent to hell with them as possible. And people who have made bad decisions feel like they're going to hell anyway. Like President Trump, he said he doesn't think he's going to heaven. That's a sad thing to hear, because we're supposed to be thinking about redemption. It's the story of the sinner and prodigal son, where he was given his inheritance early. He squandered it. So he comes back home again, and his father's happy to see him. And that's us. We're supposed to repent. We're supposed to go home to our Father who art in heaven and tell him we're sorry and why, and then pray for help and to change our ways. And a lot of people have become, because of this state of the world, a lot of people have turned back to God. And there's also a plan to take those people who have turned to God for help and try and set them up for a fall. Hey, you want to come back to God? Come back to God the way that we want you to come back to God. We'll set you up for a fall, and then hopefully you'll turn away from God again. I think that plan's going to fail. To turn people to God, if he gets a hold of you and you get a hold of him, a lot of people aren't going to let go just because there's some kind of attempt to let them down. If you push people into a corner and they find God, what could people hold on to more tenaciously than God himself? You know who's at the top, and you've taken it to him, and he's moved through your life. I don't think a fake alien invasion or the perversions of Roman Catholicism under the guise of Christianity is going to be enough to turn away from God. It's the risk that evil takes. It's the risk that the forces of darkness take to set people up to say, we'll give you God and we'll take him away again. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to work like they want it to. Again, that's the risk that evil has to take. But that's, the reason for the original fall from heaven of those fallen angels is pride. Pride's the deadliest of the 7 sins. So they think they can take on the old man and win. And they're going to fail miserably. How could you defeat the maker of all things, who gave you everything that you are and you have? To think that you could is pride and vanity. The idea that people are shooting rockets into the firmament because they think they can make man-made technology, and everything down here on the earth is God's, even those demons that he's going to send to hell. To think that you can manipulate men to shoot rockets up into the sky at the firmament is stupid. It's like, it's how what pride, what vanity, and to try and get us to, like I just say, it's the risk that evil takes to take everything away from us and to openly tell us that we're gonna live in a life pod, death pod, and eat bugs, and take in the future you'll have nothing and you'll love it. They're gonna take everything away. You're gonna push people to God, and if they get them, and it's a real connection, you're not gonna take them away. You're not gonna take people away from God. We're not waiting for the destruction of the temple and all that stuff that happened in 70 AD, the apocalypse that happened already. We're post-apocalyptic people. We're the people of Revelation 20. What's up for us, whether you or I live to see it, is the battle of Gog-Magog, where the forces of evil, like grains of sand in the sea, arm themselves and do battle against the camp of the saints and lose. I think the forces of Magog are all the demons, all the many hundreds of thousands of demons, if not millions of demons that are inside of people, leaving those people and battling against whatever the camp of the saints is. It could be just the demons against the people outright, the demons against the people on earth who have been brought to God, where the plans of the wealthy elite whose fortune shape the fates of nations, and the demons that whisper and influence them, who give them their technologies and all their stuff through the blood sacrifice and horrors against God that they commit to pay to worship demons. I mean, ultimately it's all going to fail. Like, we take risks, or we're afraid to take them, but demons and forces of darkness and evil people and the wealthy elite, they take risks too. Just because they plan and plot out stuff and have all the money, means, and resources to do it, doesn't mean that it's going to work or that they're going to get their way. And prayer is a powerful tool against these things. And getting people to pray to Jesus is a dangerous thing, because it may just very well fail. And part of what will make it fail is pride and vanity. Being evil on purpose and willfully is a distortion. It twists and distorts you. So no matter how evil and sophisticated you may be, or if you're like thousands of year old demon or whatever, you're a sick and twisted creature influencing man. We're here such a short time. It's not healthy. It's sickness, and sickness that in such a way is death, that could be leading to eternal death rather than eternal life. It could be leading to oblivion, not for all mankind, but for those who willfully choose evil and think that there's no way out, or that there's no redemption by going to God and begging for forgiveness. I think it's in the book of Enoch, where fallen angels go to Enoch and they say, go to God for us and tell him we're sorry, and ask him to forgive us because we're sorry. And so Enoch goes to God, and God says, why didn't they come to me themselves? They sent you to do it? They should have. Maybe it'd be different if they had went to me. Now that's too late. They didn't come to me. They went to you, and they said, go to God. They should have. How different could it have been? I can't tell you, I don't know. But how different could it have been if those angels had come to them themselves and asked forgiveness? They know more than us, and God said this to them, the fallen angels. He said, man will come to me anyway. Man who knows nothing, who's ignorant, will still choose me. So you go ahead and trick them if you think that you can, but they'll turn to me. And instead of just stopping, these demons, these fallen angels, these dark forces and their progeny, continue to make the wrong choices, and set us up for evil. I mean, look at the evils in the world. They're undeniable. Look at the horrible things that happen. Now we're talking about one current genocide, the genocide of the Palestinians, but there's not the only genocide. I mean, like, I would say there's an overall genocide to just destroy mankind and to get everyone that you could possibly get sent to hell, sent to hell. You know, the wealthy elite whose fortunes shape the fates of nations aren't trying to edify or uplift mankind or to make a better world for us. They're trying to kill as many people as possible, wipe them off the earth, and make the world better for themselves, and then have like a slave class that they want, so that the slaves can never outnumber the slave system they've created. And yet, the slaves already outnumber the system that the systems they've created throughout history. And you know, the same tools that are used, which is social media, let's just call it the internet, the tool that's used to destroy mankind, which is the internet, is also the same tool that can be used against those forces of darkness and can be used against evil to do stuff like I'm doing here, where it starts out where I'm talking in a video about the divide and conquer strategy to keep men and women apart. But the ultimate strategy is to keep men and women away from God. Every book on globalization has to have that part where it says we got to get people to disconnect them from God and get rid of this idea and destroy the idea of fathers, because we have a divine patriarchy. It's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Sorry to say, but none of them are women. And yet, how do we get here? Out of the womb. Isn't it amazing how God works? How important is mom? Super important. It's one of the most vital positions in society. It's vital to be a good mom, and look what happens to society when moms are attacked and preyed upon, and people say that they don't have good moms anymore, or when women say that they don't want to be moms, or men say that I want somebody but that woman can't be my mom. You know, people can live alone, but we're made to pair up by design. Men and women are component parts for one another. And yet, all throughout history, there's been people who didn't mate, didn't pair up, and not just people who are mentally deficient. I know that there's an effort today to make as many mentally deficient people as possible. But men and women are still going to pair up, and they should. We're made, whether we have kids or not, everybody wants somebody they can trust. And, you know, what it should be is first God above all else. And, you know, then a mate, then your spouse. And that's what people want. Like, if you really ask them, even people who don't have God or don't want to believe, they just wish they could have somebody they could trust that could be their mate, that their best friend. And that's how we get here. That's the story of mankind, is men and women together. I mean, look at how many people, I mean, now there's infertility crisis in the westernized nations. But in the past, there was, look at the old historic photos where it's two, a man and a woman, and then there's like double digits of people that look like them in those old photographs, where you get to see like that two little tiny people made like 18 kids or 11 kids, or, you know, more. And there was no hospitals. And, you know, be fruitful and multiply. And people used to do that, and they all had kids at home, and they lived in the dirt, and they had horse and buggy, and they just kept making kids, and each one of them was a blessing because it helped increase the wealth for the whole family. Another person to help the family grow. And families were bigger and closer together. Now we have the isolated, they call it the nuclear family. And the nuclear family, there has been every effort to divide and conquer it so that people grow up and don't mate and don't have more families and don't bring more people here. Is that what the common man or woman wants? No, that's what we're told by the computer. That's what we're told by the internet, is don't trust each other and do whatever we say. And, you know, like we're influencing each other, like we're propagandizing to each other. They don't need, sure, they spend lots of money to propagandize to us, but if you get people broken and broken down enough, then we'll just propagandize to each other that you should be red-pilled, black-pilled, and not trust each other, and don't pair up, and nobody's no good, nobody's good enough. The dating websites, you know, ruined dating, all these things. You know, it started out in the early days where like a lot of people were meeting through the dating websites. At first there was a stigma about it. Why go on a dating website? You lose you can't go in the world and get a date. Then it became like, well, if you want a date, you got to go on a dating website. Now people say that dating websites suck and you can't meet anybody on there. And and dating websites are like segregated into categories. Like, here, if you're a liberal, here's your dating websites. If you're a conservative, here's your dating websites. If you're alternative lifestyle, here's your dating websites. That's also part of a divide and conquer strategy. But also, it's a way of protecting, like, who do you want to be with? I've got to go to my specialized dating app. It just used to be, the one I remember that was for free was called Plenty of Fish, and it was a way for people to hook up. Then they had Tinder and Grindr, which they called them hookup apps. They were like, hey, go out and desensitize yourself to sex and have sex with as many people as you can get. And then it makes sex not special. And I think God wanted it to be special. And if you just look at the math of it, like, the less sexual partners you have, if you bond with someone and you wait till you're married and then you have sex, that's a whole world that the both of you are exploring on equal ground. Now everybody's banged out. Some men have had sex with a lot of women, some women have had sex with a lot of men, and then there's a lot of people that aren't getting any. And it's hard to meet somebody if you don't get out of the house. And people are staying home and hooking up online. And then there's all the earthly delights of free pornography. Like, the idea that anyone would pay for pornography, that it makes millions of dollars, is predicated upon the idea of what they now call a parasocial relationship. People don't know how to connect. So people, men and women both, and young people, are connecting to people out of their league that are, wow, this beautiful woman, this beautiful man, or whatever, that they could never have or possess. Now they have interactions with these people through chats or whatever, and they give money to them, and it's heartbreaking that people could be trapped into it. But it's like the phone sex lines. You thought you were talking to some sexy person. This is before internet. They'd have these phone sex lines. Well, now they have the same thing when you think you're talking to your cam girl or cam guy, but it's a bunch of people, wherever they are, talking to all the simps, whether they're male or female. And all anybody wants is each other. And the two things that are the two most important commandments are also the things are related to the things that people want the most. You want your best friend, which can be God. God openly says that he wants friendship with us. And you could never be closer to anyone than you could be to God if you establish a relationship with him. And if you want a healthy relationship with anybody else, then you should establish that relationship with God, because loving God above all else and knowing what that means makes it possible for you to truly be able to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you love your neighbor as yourself, then of course you will, to love that person that's your spouse, whether you're a man or a woman. I mean, that's the most primary relationship. I think that the relationship between the husband and wife is even more important than the relationship between mother and child or father and child, because it's the core of a family, is that relationship between the man and the woman. And if you want the core relationship between the man and the woman to be as strong as it could possibly be, they both have to be praying to God. A man or a woman praying to God will tell God stuff that nobody else is even going to ever know, your spouse. I mean, there's just some things you shouldn't say, not even to your spouse probably, but those things you can take up with God, and you should. He wants you to. It's the most intimate personal relationship you could ever have. And you have the ability to have a relationship with the creator and maker of all things. And that guy's got it to give. He has enough for each and every one of us. His house has many mansions. Why would you not want to take the risk? We all risk ourselves. Why would you not want to take the risk and develop a relationship with the creator and maker of all things? I mean, when it comes right down to it, if you want a perfect matchmaker, ask God to set you up with somebody, and maybe he'll help you clean up your act so that you're good enough for somebody, no matter where you are in life, whether you're a tired old slut or you're a guy that never got laid, or any of the combinations of man or women having too many sexual partners, or not having any, or not knowing how to talk to people. Take it up with God. He works in mysterious ways, which means he's helping us in so many different ways that you're probably not going to see all the ways that he helps you. But it would be good when you go to God in prayer as one of the first things to say, thank you, Lord. And then, think about what it is that you may be thanking him for. Another day. Yeah, people can be okay alone, but people can also be miserable alone, especially if you tell them that they should be miserable living alone. But I think one of the things that helps people find a mate is when you're not looking for it. It's one of the most common things that people have said over the years, obsessively trying to find a mate, and it's not working out, even if you're meeting people and having sex. But then when you stop thinking so much about meeting anybody, that's when you meet somebody. That's been my experience. I was, I've met somebody, I've met people on dating websites and hooked up that way. I mean, I've had first dates where the first date was sex, and then the sex first, and then the date was post-coital. Those have turned into relationships too. But that relationship didn't work out. And it is okay to be alone. I know a lot of people will say it's a cope, but there are a lot of people that are with somebody and they're miserable, and there are a lot of people that are without somebody that's miserable. But underneath it all, we're kind of made to pair up. But also, you know what I mean? I could just keep saying the same things over and over again, so I'll try not to do that. But, if I think it's a Thomas Merton quote. I don't remember it exactly, but I think it is good, and I'll use it here. You'll know that the life of solitude is for you if you're living it and you never think about it. But if you're living a life of solitude and it feels like something's not right, it's not. It's because you need other people. We're supposed to be social. They call it social media, but social media was used to divide and conquer us, and to judge and to point at each other, and enculturate narcissism. And they're telling us that we're not good enough and neither is anybody else. And that makes people miserable. So then what do you go to? Do you go to God for help? No, a lot of people are going to cortisol, dopamine, cortisol, dopamine, cortisol, dopamine. And it's hard to stop that. It's the drugs that your body creates, and you're being thrown way out of whack. And I don't even know you. And it's being done to me too. But also, I grew up without the internet, and I remember when it was a new thing, and I resisted it and rejected it for a long time. And now look at how many YouTube videos I have. And if you've been a subscriber to my channel for however long, look at how many videos I deleted. I had like 400 videos that I deleted. And that's not, I've been making YouTubes for probably 13 years. 13 years. I've made over 1,000 YouTube videos, but they're not up because as I'm learning and growing, I'm like, I had to take that stuff down. It's embarrassing. And one of the things about making content is you wind up sifting through your life for content, and then there's a lot of embarrassment and humiliation in that, and maybe you'll try making videos drunk or high, and then that's embarrassing too. And I should have just left them all up so you could see the learning curve that I've been on. Hey, go find my old videos. They're online on other people's channels, and they're really embarrassing. Look how far I've come. So, I think it's good to see that people change, but what we've been encouraged to do is see how people have changed from their mistakes, and then hold them to the way that they used to be, and say, you can't be that way now, you used to be this way. Well, it's in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. If you want to be forgiven your sins, and I assure you, you do, you have to be willing to forgive other people their sins. And the same thing goes with sluts. Whether it's a man that's been with a lot of women or a woman that's been with a lot of men, both sexes don't like being with somebody who's had a lot of partners, because you just feel like you're being compared to everyone else they've been with. People are supposed to pair up and build a lifetime with one another. And that gets harder to do if we become desensitized to love because of trading too many bodies. and the older you get, you have less of a life to build with somebody. And everybody wants the new hotness, men and women both, as they get older. As they get older, everybody looks back at youth and beauty and they're like, I don't want somebody my age, they're all used up. And yet, why is it considered settling? You have to settle yourself and then look at who you're with and how old you are, and then maybe it's not settling. Maybe you need to settle yourself and set yourself right with God. And one of the things that can happen is somebody can have a lot of sexual partners, and then this has been my experience, dating the same type of person over and over again. If you see the pattern, whether you're a man or a woman, that you've been dating the same person, same personality types over and over again, that means you're a personality type too. If you change, then you have a better chance of meeting somebody who doesn't fit the pattern of people you've dated. Then love can work out for you, even if you're a tired old whore, because you know what you've done in the past that didn't work out. And now you find somebody that isn't like the same type of person you've dated before, because you're not the same type of person that you used to be. And then you're not settling. You're finding what it was that you couldn't find because you had sex with too many different people, just to call it what it is. It's not, we're told that no matter what we do, it's going to fail. So it's settling. Like, all the women that have had sex with a lot of men they get old and then it's settling. No, maybe they're changing. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody is, you know what I mean? Whatever, I'm gonna let that go. But it's not necessarily settling. If you change, then you can meet somebody that's not the same. Because that's what we do. People date the same types. And that means you also are a type. And then there's a simpatico for your codependent relationship that doesn't work out. And that's why there's so many people. Try another one. Maybe that'll work out. No, I don't think love in a partner is an entitlement. And that's something young, spoiled people will do. Yeah, you guys ruined it. The internet ruined us falling in love with each other because all the women are whores. Not necessarily. I think there's a lot of men and women who aren't having sex. And not all women who are pretty are going out and having sex with a lot of people. But it is more easier for physically attractive people to go out and have more partners. And it also can become an addiction because there's chemicals for bonding that are released during sex. So by going out and having sex with a bunch of different people, it doesn't get sex out of your system, or promiscuity. It doesn't get it out of your system. It gets it into your system, and then it becomes a problem. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible to fall in love, and it doesn't mean if you're an old slut that you're not worthy of love and that nobody will love you, and that you could never love, or that you'll be settling. It's maybe you couldn't, you could intellectually understand what you want, but your actions aren't bearing that out. When you change, you can meet a different type of person. But if you don't change, that's where the bitterness comes in, where people want to make videos and tell you how they feel about it. And why they, tell you why they're down on love, and they call them relationships and all that stuff. It's all they've ever known, and they've given up. The only option would be to not give up. But also probably a better way to find a mate is to not put so much emphasis on that, and focus on, again, self-improvement and changing things about yourself, and not doing it so that you could find a mate, just doing it for a better quality of life for yourself. And turning away from how they tell us to hate one another on social media, because it's a divide and conquer strategy. But again, to reiterate, as they try to take more things away from each other, as they try to take more things away from us, all we're going to be left with is each other. And I think that is going to push people together. And if you can break people down so far to program them and shape them into whatever you want, but when it's the whole world you're talking about, you're going to push people towards God and towards each other, and I would consider that a good thing. And I want to leave you with that now, is that it's foolish to be down on love and say that you can't trust the opposite sex and point the finger. It's not selfish to focus on, yourself and self-improvement. Where that becomes detrimental is pointing at other people and saying they're not good enough. That's where the pride and vanity stuff comes in. Or, and even like self-deprecation can be constructive, but that can become a sin too. To say that you have no value or no worth. I mean, there's so many people in the world. Why can't people meet up? Well, they can. It's just in Western industrialized nations that the people are miserable. People are getting married all over the world. There's less influence of the internet in their lives. A lot of poor people are happy, but as the wealthy elite try to make sure everyone's unhappy, they want to take... It's just the whole thing of wanting to get as many people sent to hell as possible. But when you take everything away from people, all they have is each other, and they'll be willing to fight against the people who have everything at the top. And if you pray to God for help, those dark forces in the wealthy elite who work alongside them, with them, who listen to their whispers, who openly commune with demons, better look out, because you're creating, through their own pride and vanity, they're creating their own means for their downfall. I mean, the best laid plans, if they're evil, are meant to be destroyed. It's against what God wanted for us. And, enough people praying for the same things has a momentum. There's examples of this in the Old Testament where, God said repent, and the people repented, and His grace and His mercy saved them. And look at how we're being deceived. God knows that we're being deceived, that we're tricked, that we're fooled. People coming to God and asking for help are going to get results. And love is super important. It's God's love permeates all things. You can lean into it or you can turn away from it. Lean into that. To forgive others indebted to you as you forgive those who you're indebted to that cannot repay. That's in the Lord's Prayer. The apostles asked Jesus, well, how should we pray to God? And He gave us the basic prayer, which is like, I would say, the phone number to God. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as, this is the precondition, as we forgive those who trespass against us. If you want to be forgiven and helped, you got to forgive. It's hard. How can God forgive you if you can't forgive? You're not learning like one of the most important lessons. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from all evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Eternity is so much longer of a time than the short time we're down here in earthly life. Do you want to go to hell, or do you want life eternal? It's worth working towards. It's a lifelong project, and it's better to do that with a partner. I should say, it's probably more fun to do it with somebody than to do it alone. But even people who don't pair up and have mates are supposed to have other people in their lives, and in a relationship with God. I mean, even if you don't have a spouse, the most deepest you can, it's more. How much more can God give you than a spouse? If you have a spouse, the two of you can pray together. That's fantastic. But even the person who stays alone and puts their efforts and focus on developing that relationship with God, how much more will be given to them, whether man or woman? There's only one way to know for sure. So if you don't have somebody, focus on that relationship with God. And if you think you want to be with somebody, ask Him to set you up. Pray to God. You can pray for a lot of things. You're limited only in your own creativity by prayer. You're limited only by your own creativity in prayer. Yeah, I said the same thing again. Am I saying that right? Yeah, the more you pray, probably the more creative your prayers can get. So it's like positive, it's not just positive reinforcement, but it's like flexing a muscle. The more you pray, the more powerful your prayers are going to become, and the more different and expansive things you'll pray for. I think God likes it when we pray for other people. If you want things for yourself, I would say really mean it when you pray for other people. The example that I'm thinking of is the harlot who was unclean from her last act. She was a prostitute. So the harlot who was unclean from her last act got down on her knees and prayed because she was just thinking about a widow who lost her last son, and how hard it was going to be for that woman, and how sad it was that she had a son and lost him. And God heard that harlot's prayer, the prayers of a whore, unclean from her last sin, and raised that widow's son from the dead, so that she would get her son back. Prayer is a powerful thing, so don't underestimate that. I'm sorry for butchering that story, but you got the point. Anyone's prayers can matter, even a whore covered in jizz or whatever you want to believe, unclean from her last act. I was trying to say it without using vulgarities, but I got the point across. I don't think it's going to keep me out of heaven if I'm getting in at all, but a worthy effort just the same. We're made to pair up, and those of us who don't pair up, that's okay too. We can develop that relationship with God, and I highly recommend it. I mean, if you establish that relationship with God, maybe He will set you up with somebody who thinks you'd be better off that way. There's nobody that wants the best for us more than the Creator and Maker of all things. Pray to God. Amen.